It's a wild thought that right now, circling our Earth aren't just shooting stars and satellites, but two fully operational space stations.
Yeah, it really is something.
You've almost certainly heard about the International Space Station, this incredible collaborative effort that's been a constant presence above us for, what, over 2 decades now?
Oh yeah, the ISS is iconic.
But there's another one up there. China's Tiangong, which translates to Heavenly Palace. It's been in orbit since 2021. And, well, it definitely doesn't get the same buzz in Western media.
Not nearly as much, no.
So the question that keeps nagging at me is, what exactly is going on inside this second human outpost in space?
That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Think of this as getting the inside scoop on Tiangong.
Okay.
Our goal is to explore the activities happening on board and, understand what these might tell us about humanity's future beyond our planet.
Right. And when you think about the timeline, the ISS has this long, rich history, more than 25 years of continuous human habitation in space. It's incredible.
It really is.
China's journey with space stations is much newer, really starting back in 2011.
Which makes their advancements even more interesting, I think. So let's go back to the beginning. In 2011, China launched its first space station, also named Tiangong, but we now call it Tiangong-1.
Okay, so Tiangong-1 wasn't the big, complex structure we see today. It was more of a proof of concept.
Precisely. Tiangong-1 was relatively simple. Imagine like a tube, maybe 10 meters long, with a couple of solar panels sticking out.
Huh.
Its main purpose was for China to master some really critical skills: how to meet up and connect spacecraft in orbit, what we call rendezvous and docking.
Okay, the fundamentals.
Exactly. And it was also their first real experience with having people live in space for longer periods.
So it was about learning the essential building blocks. Did astronauts, or sorry, should I say taikonauts, visit it?
Yes, they did.
Oh.
Over its nearly 7 years of operation, Tiangong-1 hosted both crewed and uncrewed missions. This let Chinese taikonauts get some really invaluable experience working in space.
Right, learning by doing.
And that success paved the way for their next step.
Which was Tiangong 2, launched in 2016, right? What was its role in this progression?
Tiangong 2 was a more advanced test bed for technologies. It was designed to try out key systems and capabilities that would be needed for a larger, more permanent space station.
So, ironing out the kinks.
Sort of, yeah. And once it had achieved its goals, it was intentionally brought back down to Earth in 2019, clearing the path for the Tiangong we're really focusing on now.
Okay, so that brings us to the current Tiangong, sometimes called Tiangong 3. This is the main event then. What kind of scale are we talking about here?
The current Tiangong is a much grander ambition. The plan is for it to host literally thousands of experiments over its expected 15-year lifespan.
Thousands, wow.
Structurally, it's built in sections, modular. You've got the Tian core module serving as the main living space, and then 2 science modules, Wentian and Mengtian.
And these science modules, they each have their own specific scientific focus?
Exactly. Wentian is primarily focused on life sciences and medical tech, looking at how space affects living things and, developing ways to counteract those effects.
Makes sense.
Mengtian, on the other hand, delves into the fascinating world of microgravity, looking at how it impacts things like fluids and combustion.
That's impressive. And in terms of size, how does the current Tiangong compare to those earlier versions, Tiangong 1 and 2?
Oh, it's considerably larger. Tiangong has these rotating solar panels to efficiently capture sunlight for power, an external robotic arm that can be used for spacewalks and moving things around. It weighs about 100 tons and stretches 55 meters in length. It can also house up to 6 taikonauts at any one time.
That's substantial, 6 people. And like the ISS, it wasn't all launched together, was it? It came in pieces.
No, exactly. It was assembled in orbit, piece by piece. The different modules were launched between 2021 and 2022, and then carefully connected up there.
It's easy to overlook the incredible engineering feat that is, just connecting these huge things in space.
Absolutely.
Now, when taikonauts are living up there, what's their daily routine like? Is it similar to what we know about astronauts on the ISS?
In many ways, yes. I mean, staying healthy in microgravity is a universal challenge, right?
Sure.
So, just like on the ISS, taikonauts on Tiangong have a wide variety of space food, reportedly around 120 different types to keep them nourished.
120, that's pretty good variety.
Better than camping, maybe. And daily exercise is absolutely essential to combat the muscle wasting and bone density loss that happens without gravity.
That makes sense. They must be pretty busy with, well, all that science. But I also read about efforts to get the public involved in some of the experiments, like outreach.
Absolutely. Tiangong, like the ISS, also acts as a platform for engaging with the public, especially students. Taikonauts conduct live demonstrations, like showing how fire behaves in zero gravity,
Oh,
which is
cool.
always captivating, yeah. And there have also been collaborative projects, like students on Earth growing rice seeds that are from the same batch being grown on Tiangong.
Ah, so comparing results.
Exactly, allowing scientists to study the effects of microgravity on plant growth with a direct comparison.
That's a fantastic way to spark interest in science. You mentioned that the experiments on Tiangong have a focused set of goals. It's not just a broad spectrum of scientific inquiry like maybe the ISS is sometimes perceived.
That's a key point. While the ISS hosts a wide range of international experiments with diverse aims, Tiangong's research program seems, well, quite centered around 5 specific themes.
Okay.
And when you look at these themes together, they really reveal a very ambitious long-term vision.
Okay, let's hear them. What are these 5 core research areas?
All right, the 5 key themes are developing technologies for on-orbit assembly and construction in space,
Right, building stuff up there.
advancing robotics and autonomous systems,
Mhm.
exploring new energy and propulsion technologies, refining environmental control and life support systems,
Crucial for long stays.
and innovating new generic technologies for spacecraft. Basically, testing new kit.
Those sound incredibly significant. Foundational, almost. Let's start with that first one, on-orbit assembly and construction. What's the big picture here?
Well, the fundamental goal is to develop the technologies needed to build large structures, maybe even entire spacecraft, directly in orbit.
Why is that so important?
Think about it. Launching massive, complex things from Earth is incredibly expensive and inherently risky. Being able to manufacture and assemble them in space would be a total game changer.
Right. Avoid the whole tyranny of the rocket equation somewhat. And they're already making progress in this area, right? I remember reading something about 3D printing.
Exactly. A 2023 paper from Chinese scientists outlined their plans to develop capabilities for 3D printing and other manufacturing tools while in orbit. They even did some pioneering work in 3D printing ceramics under microgravity way back in 2018.
Ceramics, wow.
Yeah. The potential is enormous. Imagine sending up raw materials and then just printing the necessary parts, or even using resources that might be available on, say, asteroids or the moon.
So living off the land, space style.
Kind of. It would significantly reduce launch costs and all the logistical complexities.
That's really forward thinking. It changes the whole equation of building big things in space. And I think I also saw something about inflatable structures, like space tents.
Yes, the paper also discusses inflatable and scalable habitats. The idea is essentially like having tents on the moon, as you say, lightweight structures that are easy to transport but can be expanded to create living or working space. And this concept isn't just for the moon, it has implications for other destinations in space as well. Mars, maybe elsewhere.
Okay, that's the construction aspect. What about robotics and autonomous systems? Theme number 2. How do they fit into this vision?
Robotics are seen as crucial for a lot of the heavy lifting, quite literally.
Makes sense.
Think about tasks like repairing structures, helping with construction, moving cargo around outside the station. Just like robotic assembly lines transform manufacturing on Earth, similar systems could automate many tasks in orbit.
So freeing up the taikonauts for more complex work.
Precisely. And taikonauts are already testing robots in microgravity, even doing things like guiding a robot through a pipe just to understand their capabilities and limitations in that environment. It's different up there.
That makes perfect sense. Now, the third theme, new energy and propulsion technology. What are they exploring beyond the usual solar panels and, standard rocket fuel?
This area suggests ambitions that go way beyond Earth orbit. While solar panels work well closer to the sun, their efficiency drops off dramatically at greater distances.
Right, like out at Jupiter or Saturn.
Exactly. NASA's Juno mission to Jupiter really showed the limits and only gets like 3% of the sunlight we get here. So China is clearly looking at alternative energy sources, which implies they're seriously considering large-scale projects much further out in the solar system.
Interesting.
And similarly, traditional chemical rocket fuel becomes incredibly heavy and expensive for long-duration missions. The focus here is on developing more efficient propulsion systems that can operate for longer periods, and ideally, the ability to produce fuel in situ.
In situ, meaning on-site, right? Like where they're going.
That's it, making fuel where you need it.
So the goal is self-sufficiency for these potential outposts. That connects directly to the fourth research theme, environmental control and life support, doesn't it?
Absolutely, 100%. Creating self-sustaining habitats requires mastering the recycling of essential resources like oxygen and water, as well as the ability to grow food.
Like those rice experiments you mentioned earlier.
Exactly, they're part of this bigger effort. Scientists are also studying how microgravity affects, well, all sorts of biological systems to understand the long-term health challenges of living in space. Waste degradation, microbial environments, it all needs managing.
And I remember reading about a truly fascinating experiment involving artificial photosynthesis. That sounds like science fiction.
Yeah, that was a really innovative development, quite groundbreaking. Taikonauts recently tested a technology that uses a semiconductor catalyst to produce both oxygen and hydrocarbon ethylene directly from carbon dioxide,
So taking CO2, which is waste.
and turning it into breathable oxygen and fuel. It essentially mimics how plants use sunlight. What's really interesting is that hydrocarbon ethylene can be used as rocket fuel.
Wow.
And researchers also believe this process could be adapted to create other valuable resources like methane, maybe even sugars eventually, like building blocks for food.
That's incredible. Not only does it provide a potentially more efficient way to recycle oxygen, apparently the current electrolysis method on the ISS uses a fair chunk of its energy.
Reportedly about a third, yeah.
But it also offers a potential pathway to producing fuel and maybe even food while in space. This feels like a real step towards, well, independence from Earth,
Yeah.
cutting the cord almost.
Exactly. It's potentially a more efficient system, it operates at room temperature, and it effectively turns a waste product, carbon dioxide, into valuable resources. This kind of tech is crucial for any long-term space missions or settlements off-world.
Okay, amazing. And finally, the fifth research theme, new generic technology for spacecraft. This sounds like it covers a broad range of things. A bit of a catch-all.
In a way, it does. It's about testing all sorts of equipment and systems under the unique conditions of microgravity. There are many aspects of how things behave in space, particularly how fluids move around without gravity pulling them down.
Right, that must be tricky.
It is, and it's difficult to accurately model or replicate that perfectly on Earth for long durations. So this in-orbit testing is essential for ensuring the reliability and performance of future spacecraft technologies, making sure stuff works before you bet a mission on it.
So if we bring all five of these research themes together, building stuff in orbit, robots doing work, new power and engines, closed-loop life support, and testing new gear, what's the bigger picture that starts to emerge? What's the narrative?
Well, when you put them all together, it strongly suggests that China's long-term ambitions extend far beyond simply operating a space station in low Earth orbit. They appear to be laying the groundwork piece by piece for potentially establishing a network of self-sufficient habitats throughout the solar system. Bases capable of utilizing local resources, that in situ idea again, and manufacturing what they need on site.
It sounds like they're not just planning to visit other worlds, but to potentially stay and build actual infrastructure out there.
That's certainly the direction the research points towards. Now, of course, these are early stages, and it's important to remember that China isn't the only nation exploring these kinds of concepts. NASA, ESA, private companies. Lots of interest here.
Sure.
However, the focused nature of their research on Tiangong, these 5 specific pillars, is quite revealing about their long-term strategic goals in space. It seems very deliberate.
And what about working with other countries? Is China keeping these developments, under wraps, secretive?
Interestingly, no. China has actually expressed a significant interest in international collaboration on Tiangong. They've been quite open about that.
But we don't see, say, American astronauts going up there.
Right. Current American law, the Wolf Amendment, restricts NASA from direct bilateral collaboration with China without specific congressional approval, which hasn't happened.
Politics?
And Europe. Well, Europe initially had plans for collaboration, sending astronauts potentially, but they withdrew those plans in 2023, citing budgetary issues and a lack of political green lights, essentially.
So despite the open invitation, there are hurdles.
There are definitely geopolitical and practical hurdles. But despite these challenges, China has extended an open invitation to scientists from all around the world to propose and conduct joint experiments on Tiangong. Some international experiments are already approved or flying.
So while there are these big political factors at play, the door isn't completely closed for international scientific cooperation on some level.
It seems not completely closed, no. The extent to which other nations will fully participate, especially at the astronaut level, remains to be seen.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating look inside Tiangong. Just to recap, we've talked about some potentially groundbreaking research like artificial photosynthesis, turning waste CO2 into oxygen and fuel.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
Significant advancements in building things in space, 3D printing, using local materials, developing sophisticated robots for space tasks, and exploring completely new ways to power and propel spacecraft for deep space journeys.
Exactly. And all of this activity on Tiangong really indicates a major shift, I think, in our approach to space exploration. It feels like it's moving beyond those initial steps into orbit and brief lunar visits towards a future where humanity could establish a permanent presence beyond Earth.
It really does make you think. If we are potentially on the verge of truly leaving the nest, so to speak, and setting up shop elsewhere in the solar system,
Yeah.
are we actually ready for the profound changes that this new era of space exploration will inevitably bring?
That's the big question, isn't it?
That's definitely something to consider.